This legacy metagame is driving me mad. It's the perfect time to try something new. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. This is MahfuzVanGogh, your Dredge guy, and today I'm playing not Dredge, but Madness, and let me explain why. Dredge decks in Legacy lately, we Dredge players are not having the best moment of our lives because Legacy is full of graveyard hate. Many decks with graveyard hate in the main deck, not only Doughty Voidwalker or Leyline of the Void, but also Endurances and Bojuka Bog. We have Eldrazi new decks with crop rotation and Bojuka Bog, and even Delver decks now play with 3, 4, or 5 cards in their sideboard dedicated to graveyard hate. It is almost unbearable. So instead of trying Dredge today, I'm trying a new approach to Madness. Not everyone knows about it, but I was responsible to introduce some new cards to the Hollowvine attempts in Legacy that we had until 2021. And I introduced Imp and Careful Study and other cards. Angel's Ravager, I was responsible to introduce this card to this archetype and actually building a new archetype. So I feel like Madness is like a child to me, my own child. So it is really fun to play Madness. When I created the first well-succeeded lists in 2021, they had Imp, they had Careful Study. This was before Modern Horizons 2, so Blazing Rootwalla was not a card yet. So we had other cards, other fringe cards like vampires and everything. And I managed to do really well with some Madness decks at that moment. We were living hell of a meta game with many decks playing Endurance in the main deck. So it was really hard for Dredge. And like today, that we are living a really difficult moment for Dredge decks in Legacy. So let's try to have some fun with Madness. Madness is a deck that is not fully dedicated to graveyard. So even if your opponent will have some graveyard card, a graveyard hate card, we can win the game anyways, because the only card that really needs to be in your graveyard is Vengevine. Vengevine is a great card because it is a 4/3 haste creature that in this deck we will never play this from our hand because this is a Grixis Madness deck. So let's analyze what I'm trying to do for the first time with this Madness deck. Master of Death. This card sees Vintage play in Countervine decks. So Vengevine is super fun to play in Vintage. And in Vintage, you have Master of Death to have a recursible creature to get back from your graveyard each time you discard it. This time we will try to discard Master of Death to Psychic Frog. So every turn you have an extra card to discard to your frog. We can even go further in this approach, including cards like Squee, for example, that can also be brought back for free on your own upkeep. But I'll try to include only Master of Death this time, because Master of Death is also a blue card that can be pitched to Force of Will. So this deck has a total of 20 blue cards. So this is on a good range of blue cards to play a good Force of Will deck. So the Force of Will is in a good position here to be cast a good amount of the time on your first turn. And we will not have, at least now, we will not have green mana to cast Vengevine or Basking Rootwalla from our hand, because we'll just try to have a Grixis mana base. I'm not sure if this is correct. I just built a quick mana base here to test for the first time. Maybe we don't need 3 Badlands. Maybe we could include a Bayou instead of a Badlands here to have all of our lands producing a black mana to cast our Imp, and almost every land producing blue mana for Careful Study, and 1 land to produce green mana to even cast or pump a Rootwalla if we need to. Or maybe we can try other things. But when I test a new deck, I always try to start with the basics. Feel when playing the deck, how the deck feels, how the mana base will feel, if this 8 counterspells will be good or not. I'm not sure, because we are living in a Vexing Bubble metagame right now. So maybe it is not good to have Force of Will days in a deck like this. But it is a new attempt to survive in a heavy graveyard hate metagame. So let's see if this will pay off. We'll have a total of 8 creatures that can discard cards for value, especially Psychic Frog. And we have enablers in Careful Study. Not looting, because we will not have... we could have looting here instead of Careful Study, but I just want to have more blue cards to pitch to Force of Will. So this is a Grixis Madness. I doubt that we will have opportunities to cast looting from our graveyard, because the metagame is also really fast lately. And Angel's Ravager, if you don't know this card, this is really good. It needs to attack each turn if able, but each time you attack, you discard your hand, something that you like to do anyways because you have Psychic Frog and many Madness cards, but you can also draw 3 cards. You not only can, you need to draw 3 cards. This is mandatory. So this card is not good in a heavy Orcish Bowmasters metagame. But now, since Orcish Bowmasters is seeing less and less play because of Psychic Frog, they both try to occupy the same slot, usually, the 2-mana creature. So maybe Ravager can shine again. So let's try this new Madness build, this attempt of including Master of Death in a Madness deck for the first time, with Psychic Frog and with counter spells. This is really fresh. I never built a Madness deck with counter spells and heavily blue like this one. And Psychic Frog and Master of Death are also novelties, so maybe this is good. Or maybe it's at least fun. And what about our sideboard? Since I'm testing that many new cards in a Madness deck, and I want to have some fun today, I'm also trying a completely different sideboard from whatever you probably saw in a Madness or Dredge deck before. I never played games of Magic with those 15 cards in my sideboard. What are my thoughts about each one of them? Let me explain. Wasteland. Wasteland can be probably really good against lands strategies, or any deck based on lands that can have cards like Maze of Ith or cards like Tabernacle. Those cards can be really bad to fight from our point of view, from our Madness decks, because we need to hit my opponent with creatures. We cannot win the deck by a combo or other. We are an aggro deck. We need to hit. We need to connect with our creatures to win as soon as possible. So Wasteland is here to just get rid of my my opponent's first Tabernacle or other land that they can have. Noxus Revival is a card that also sees lots of play in Vintage decks, but not the same amount in Legacy. And I think this can be really good together, combined with Surgical Extraction, against some of the graveyard strategies like Rescaminator or Reanimator decks, because you can exile cards for free, or even force my opponent to draw a fatty on their own turn. Or maybe you can just take some of our cards back from our graveyard. For example, if our opponent destroys a Psychic Frog and we really want a Psychic Frog next turn, we can just put a Psychic Frog on top and guarantee that we will draw one. Or maybe you can do this with a land. My opponent will cast Wasteland, targeting my only Badlands or Underground Sea, and I don't want to take risks next turn. I can just Noxus Revival and take one land from my graveyard to the top of my deck. This is a really flexible card, so I want to test it in Legacy for the first time. So many things to test with this deck today. And what about Stifle? As I said just a couple of minutes ago, we are living in a new metagaming Legacy. We see the rise of Eldrazi decks. Eldrazi decks can have cards like Ulamog and other heavy Eldrazi. Even Eldrazi that can destroy your own lands and have good effects, good trigger effects when they are casted. And Stifle maybe is a good card to fight those cards. But not only that, many graveyard hits that my opponent can do at instant speed, like Endurance or other cards, can be just stifled. And since we are playing Wasteland, maybe we have some opportunity this league to do a completely change in our games 2 and 3 and include Stifle and Wasteland and build something similar to a Tempo Madness strategy with Force of Will, Daze, Wasteland, and Stifle to get our opponents by surprise. As I said to you, I want to have fun and take new paths with this deck. Maybe this is just not competitive enough, but I feel that there is something behind this idea, especially being more heavily blue deck now. I want to test Master of Death combined with Angel's Ravager in this Grixis approach. And that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed this league with me. If you didn't do this yet, click the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment below. And let's live this together. Let's go right now. Oh, and one more thing before we start. As a Dredge player, I want to keep playing Dredge, so let me explain a little bit more about this. I tried to play Dredge, not recording leagues, in a couple of days ago, and I did really bad with some new Dredge strategies that I'm trying to create, even including Psychic Frog. So I don't know if I have the best combination of cards yet, so I'm saving the best for last. Next week we will have a new Legacy video with Dredge, probably with Psychic Frog. I think there is something there that needs to be explored. But what I can see from our metagame now, you as a Dredge player, if you want to play Dredge, you need to be really fast, like playing Turbo Dredge or being super fast on your turn 1, because your opponent can win on their own turn 1, or having great cards against you since they go to turn 2, for example. More than ever, this is important, to be really fast, or to be super slow with cards like Force of Will, Daze, and Grief, like Blue Dredge does. The thing is, Blue Dredge right now is harder than ever to play it, because our opponent will have cards like Vexing Bubble. So having free spells against Vexing Bubble, like Force of Will, Grief, and Daze, this is super important to a Blue Dredge strategy, and it's not so easy to live as a Dredge player lately, at least in Magic Online. In Magic Online, people are getting super competitive with new decks, and everyone is trying the new cards like Vexing Bubble, Eldrazi, and other stuff. Psychic Frog is everywhere. So online, the metagame is not so approachable, let's say like that, to Dredge decks. But I'm still trying to to find the best configuration of cards to play Dredge in this metagame. So let's wait just a couple more of days to have Dredge back into this channel. But now let's have fun with Madness. Okay, this is round 1, but this hand is a mulligan. No lands, no keep. Oh, this is a great hand. This is a great hand. We can even... Do I keep Daze or I keep the second land here? I could go Marsh Flats, Underground Sea, but then I cannot do anything after that. We are on the draw. I'll try to keep both lands instead of Daze, but maybe it would be better to only keep Daze. Because if you draw Angel's Ravager, for example, which is a great card. Okay, double Vengevine. Whoa, this will be good. So let's cast Putter the Imp. Okay, it resolves. So, let's discard Vengevine. Vengevine. If you never saw a Madness deck in action, you will love this. Poxwalkers, and now Rootwalla. Rootwalla is being cast from exile, so Poxwalkers will trigger. And our double Vengevine will enter the battlefield because we are casting our second creature this turn. So this is a great turn 1. Oh, now I feel bad because we don't have a green mana to go after with Marsh Flats next turn, because this would be lethal for sure. But we are already with 8, 11, 10. Yeah, we can already deal lethal damage. Let's see if my opponent can do something good. Entomb. Okay, my opponent will combo us with Reanimator and we're gonna lose. Oh no. Let's see. My opponent can reanimate Atraxa. Atraxa can gain 7 life, blocking a Vengevine. We deal 7. Let's see if they have a reanimation spell. Oh, it is reanimate. So we need to deal 4 damage. We need to do 11 damage here. They block Vengevine, 7, 8, 9. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, we cannot win because we don't have green mana. If we had green mana, well, let's see what my opponent will take. My opponent will choose their cards. They can block a Vengevine going up to 11 and 7, 8, 9. If we had green mana, we would have the win here, even against Atraxa on turn 2. Oh no, yeah. Is this our reality? We need to be a 4-color deck instead of a... Well, our opponent doesn't know that we don't have green mana, so I think I will play Marsh Flats and I will attack, and let's see what happens. Maybe they think they are just lost and concede the game, but I don't think so. They block Vengevine, as expected. They are going up to 2. Let's crack Marsh Flats. Take our Underground Sea to cast this Careful Study. Yeah. And now we cannot win anymore, guys, unless my opponent has nothing else and we can push more damage with other creatures. We had a great turn 1. Unfortunately, my opponent also had a great turn 1. So Vengevine and Rootwalla will be discarded. And I'm doing this because my opponent can have Grave or something like that next turn. And it's better to just cast Careful Study and have more creatures. If those Rootwallas were the red ones, this would be a win. My opponent has Wasteland, Troll, Animate Dead, and Force of Will in their hand, and other cards that they already had before reanimating Atraxa. They play Wasteland. Okay, they will Animate Dead, my Vengevine. Yeah, so this is... what? Oh, my opponent forgot about attacking here. They forgot that Atraxa has Vigilance, or maybe this was just a misclick. We have no option unless attack here. We will attack, but my opponent will block my Vengevine with their own Vengevine. Oh no, with Atraxa. Yeah, we cannot win anymore. My opponent will go back to 9 life. We'll deal only 3 damage. We'll have double Vengevine on our graveyard, so maybe if we... triple Vengevine, I'm sorry. So maybe even if my opponent attacks here going up to 13, triple Vengevine would be 12 damage. Yeah, no, I don't think we can win anymore, unfortunately. Let's see if my opponent will forget to attack again. They play Underground Sea. Okay, this time they doesn't forget. Yeah, Yeah, we cannot win anymore, guys. Let's just concede the game here. Oh, they even have another Entomb to Archon of Cruelty, and they will reanimate. Something happened with my recording from the sideboard on, so I will just use the replay of this match to show you this match with commentary on games 2 and 3. So this sideboard here, what did I do? I chose to include our 7 answers to Graveyard instead of Force of Will. We are on the play now. 1 Careful Study, 1 Master of Death, and 1 Basking Rituala. And then we will have 3 Surgical Extractions and 4 Noxus Revival. This is what I did. And let's see how it went, if this worked on game 2. Okay, I started with a good hand, not great. We have Noxus Revival to target one of my opponent's creatures. And we have Psychic Frog, which can be really good, and Daze to counter something. We have, for the first time this league, a combination of Psychic Frog and Master of Death. Let's see if this will pay off as a good synergy combination. We start by playing Bloodstained Mire and passing the turn. My opponent had a mulligan to 4, so they were looking for something, maybe Graveyard Hate, and they started with Grief. And now we have an option here. Will we Daze Grief just to take a mana? Of course we will not, because if my opponent wants to take Daze, I can just have great cards from there. If my opponent wants to discard my Psychic Frog, that's fine, because I have Noxus Revival, and I want to cast Psychic Frog on next turn. For example, they can have Reanimate here. They had a mulligan to 4. Maybe they try to build a scam package with Reanimate and Grief. So now seeing this hand, I know that my opponent will see that I have Noxus Revival. So if they want to reanimate the Grief, I will not let them do it. If they want to reanimate my Psychic Frog, I will not let them do it. And I also have Daze. So this is bulletproof compared to the package Ring plus Reanimate. So instead of Reanimate, my opponent Pounders. And in response, I just use Noxus Revival to take my Psychic Frog on top, because they decided to discard my Psychic Frog. And I will cast my Psychic Frog with Daze, and I immediately discard my Blazing Root Walla for value. I could wait here, but since my opponent can maybe cast Daze on my Blazing Root Walla, and I want to push some damage, so I decided to just cast it immediately. And now on my opponent's end step, I discard Master of Death for a great value, because paying 1 life, this card will come back to my hand. We draw Surgical Extraction, which is amazing, and now I'm discarding Master of Death a second time. And let's attack. We are attacking here. I will draw an extra card with Psychic Frog. Oh no, I will not, because my opponent has Fatal Push. So let's just pump Root Walla. And now my opponent tries to Entomb. I let it go because I want to cast Surgical with Daze to counter a counter spell from my Surgical. So it's okay if you want to put your Traxa there. And now my opponent tries to cast Psychic Frog. So I'll just Daze it. And now my opponent has 0 cards. And I will have Blazing Root Walla, a Surgical, and an Underground Sea. This Master of Death will come back, paying 1 life. And we have another Psychic Frog. And this time I know that it will resolve and my opponent doesn't have something in their hand immediately. This can be dangerous because an opponent here could have a Reanimation spell for Atraxa. But since I know that they have 0 cards in their hand, they will draw only 1 card this turn. I know that they cannot have Reanimation spell plus Counter spell at the same moment. So the Surgical is fine to counter any Reanimation spell. So my opponent draws and pass. And I will discard Basking Root Walla for value and Master of Death. And now we can attack for a huge amount of damage. This time I decided to pump Root Walla. This could be a mistake here, because my opponent could have now a combination of Daze and Reanimate spell. And the Surgical can be countered. But I had a Daze as a draw from my Psychic Frog. So better lucky than good sometimes. And my opponent just concedes. So this was enough to win game 2. And now it's game 3. This time we are on the draw. And my sideboard options were pretty much the same. We have no changes on game 3. So this hand, we have Noxus Revival, Careful Study, Poxwalkers, Dangerous Ravager, and 3 lands. I did a mulligan here, and I mulligan a second time. And this is a great 5-card hand, because we have Daze and Noxus Revival, and Psychic Frog. It's not perfect. My opponent also went to 5 cards, so this is a 5 cards against 5 cards. And they started with Basic Swamp and Pass. So maybe cycling Draw or maybe casting Entomb. And for both approaches we have a Daze plus Noxus Revival. We just draw another land, so we play Verdant Catacombs and pass. My opponent plays Wasteland and passes. And now it's our turn. We draw a second Frog. This is a good card to draw a second copy. And I'll fetch. My opponent activates Wasteland to destroy my land. So in response, I would just tap my land for mana. And so I took another Underground Sea to guarantee blue and cast a Psychic Frog. My opponent had no counterspell, no blue mana. Now they have, so they cast for the strength. They cast a play, I'm sorry. And they try to go for the throat, but I have Daze, and my Psychic Frog lives for another turn. Now we can discard Blazing Root Walla for value. I can replay a land, but after attacking, because maybe I can draw another land, maybe I don't want to play Underground Sea. Let's attack first. I don't want to discard any of those cards yet. Surgical Extraction is a great draw, so Psychic Frog is a good card. And Brainstorm from my opponent. They play Underground Sea, and they try their own Psychic Frog. That's fine. And you can see here something that I will probably see a lot playing this league, and maybe in the future playing with Psychic Frog. Whoever plays your own Psychic Frog before your opponent's Psychic Frog will have an advantage, because you will draw extra cards. And you see, now I have 5 cards in my hand. If I want to discard every one of them to have a large Psychic Frog against my opponent's Psychic Frog, that is only a 1/2 with 2 cards in their hand. So if you can cast your Psychic Frog and keep it in the battlefield, it is probably a game-winning plan. So now it's almost unbeatable here for my opponent. We even have a Vengevine now. So now I will attack with both cards, because I know that if my opponent wants to block Blazing Root Walla, they will be forced to discard 2 cards. There are 2 cards to have the Psychic Frog survive. And maybe they don't want to discard their own cards, so I'm trying to push 1 extra damage here, and it works. My opponent will be forced to discard their cards to help their frog to survive. So they discard Grief and Daze. Oh, that's good. And I will discard Vengevine here to push 1 more damage with my own frog. I will draw a card, it's another land. I will play it, and I pass a turn with Noxus Revival, Surgical Extraction, and another Psychic Frog. My opponent attacks me, and will draw a card. And then they try to reanimate my Vengevine, and I cast Noxus Revival to put my Vengevine on top of my deck. But I don't want to draw Vengevine on the spot, so I will just shuffle Vengevine back in my deck. And now that I have multiple lands here, I probably don't want that many lands, so I can discard at least 1 of them. I decided to discard Marsh Flats, and I will draw an extra card. Daze is not that good, because now my opponent has many lands. But now I play my second Psychic Frog, and how can my opponent win from here? They need removal spells, or maybe a quick reanimation plan. They are just giving flying to their own frog. I will not block. I don't intend to block this frog. My opponent puts another counter on their frog and draws a card and plays a land to surveil. They surveil the troll to their own graveyard. And now we find Angel's Ravager. And if you never saw this card in action, maybe we'll have a chance to see it. We cast it with Madness to put an extra counter on my smaller frog. And I will discard Daze here, because Daze is not good when your opponent already have 4 lands. And we'll draw 2 cards with double Psychic Frog. My opponent is already on 3 life. We draw an extra Ravager and a Master of Death, which is super good and synergistic with Psychic Frog, as we already saw. And now my opponent ponders and concedes. So we won after losing the first game with almost unbeatable turn 1, but our opponent had a turn 2 Atraxa. And then we managed to win games 2 and 3 with the help of our Surgical Extraction and Noxus Revival combination. So 1-0 against Rescaminator. Let's go to our second match. Alright, we are on the play with a control-ish hand. I'm not sure if this is good enough to keep. My opponent, I remember playing against them some months ago. I think they play black decks, sometimes with Poxwalkers in the main deck. This hand could be good, but with 3 lands, but I think on the play we want some more aggressive than that. So let's mulligan. This is almost good. My opponent kept 7. I will mulligan again. No, let's go to 4, unfortunately. Okay, we have Psychic Frog. Let's keep this. And I will put back Careful Study, Marsh Flats, and Poxwalkers, I guess. Let's go with a frog, a frog hand. I will play Badlands and pass. This can be really bad, because we had a mulligan to 4 against an opponent who plays black with a good keep. But if this Psychic Frog lives, at least for 1 turn or 2 turns, maybe you can come back from this bad starting hand. Oh, my opponent is playing Cloudpost, so no black. We draw, blue to Delta, so let's play Underground Sea and cast Psychic Frog. Let's see if my opponent can respond, or Froggy. Oh, I cannot pass a turn here because I want to discard Master of Death until the end of my turn. Once upon a time for my opponent, Glimmerpost. They play Cloudpost and Vexing Bubble. That's fine. So this is one of the new decks that can be really hard to beat with Dredge, because they have Crop Rotation, Bajuka Bog, Vexing Bubble, but Madness maybe is more qualified to win this. So let's take Master of Death back to our hand. Yes, I would like to pay 1 life and withdraw. Careful Study. I don't think I will cast Careful Study immediately here. Let's just draw a card with our Frog. I will even discard Polluted Delta, and let's hit our opponent for 4 damage. Yes, attacking our opponent and drawing a card. Okay, Daze. This is probably not in its best world against post decks, but let's see. I still think I will hold this Careful Study a little bit more. Maybe next turn I will cast it before combat. Careful Study would be better here if we had a Vengevine or 3 lands to maybe discard an extra creature, but I'm not sure what my opponent will do this turn. Let's see if they have something. Now we can cast Daze for its full price to get around Vexing Bubble. Okay, my opponent goes with the One Ring, but we are prepared with this Daze. This will feel super bad for my opponent, I believe. Yeah, your Vexing Bubble. Oh, they have Elvish Spirit Guide. That's okay. We tried. This means that Psychic Frog will not draw a card next turn, because it needs to deal combat damage, and with protection, Psychic Frog will not hit. So our Froggy will wait 1 more turn. Our opponent plays Glimmerpost. We already knew about it. And we return Master of Death to our hand and draw a card. Okay, now we have a Vengevine. I think even if my opponent has the One Ring, I will do this play right now, because... or maybe I wait 1 more turn here. Maybe I wait 1 more turn. If I wait 1 more turn, because I hardly... it is not too reliable to cast Careful Study here to find exactly 2 creatures to cast, right? We need 2 Root Wallers, or 1 Potridimp and 1 Root Waller, so this would be a lucky play. So I think I will just pass here and try to do better next turn. We can again discard Master of Death to Psychic Frog. Is my opponent afraid of Orcish Bowmasters? We don't have Orcish Bowmasters, but we could have Orcish Bowmasters on this spot. Okay, my opponent will not tap the One Ring, not yet. So I will discard Master of Death, and let's go to our turn. Master of Death comes back. Poxwalkers, okay. So now I will cast Careful Study, and in response my opponent will probably tap the One Ring, but that's fine. Let's cast Careful Study here. Okay, we found double Root Wallers. That's absolutely amazing. So let's discard Vengevine and Poxwalkers. We'll discard a card here with Madness. Yes, I would like to cast Waller. It will be countered, but that's okay. Oh, I did this wrong. I should do it with a Basking Root Waller first, because I could cast this from my hand. Okay, wrong order. It's almost a new deck. It feels like ages ago that I built my first Madness decks. So let's discard our Basking Root Waller. Let's see if this will provoke a response from my opponent. Vengevine enters the battlefield. Yes. And our Froggy will be huge now. So let's attack with both. No blocks for my opponent, I believe. So let's discard this Master of Death. And we will have lethal next turn. My opponent needs the One Ring, or just win the game. Okay, Potridimp is good. So maybe it was for the best that we couldn't cast Blazing Root Waller. Let's just play Potridimp. It will be a 7/7 next turn. 2/2, I'm sorry, with 7 cards in our graveyard. So let's see what my opponent can do. Probably bad things with Eye of Ugin. Okay, they found Ulamog. They will lose 1 life from the One Ring. They need 1 extra mana to cast Ulamog. They have 3, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, they have 10 mana. Let's see what they will exile. I bet they will exile our better creatures, Frog and Vengevine, but maybe I'm wrong. They will suffer 1 more damage next turn with the One Ring. So we only need to deal 4 damage to my opponent. Now it's our turn. Master of Death can come back. Yes. And we draw Careful Study. Now what? If I just attack, my opponent will go to 3. Then they attack back, exile the top 20 cards of our library. So I think I will try Careful Study here. Okay, not such luck. I can discard you and you. And I will definitely attack. My opponent will probably block Poxwalkers since Ulamog is indestructible. Let's just attack here to push some damage. My opponent needs to find another One Ring or gain some life with Glimmerposts. I will play my Badlands and pass. So my opponent needs to win the game this turn, or stabilize with more life. They play Caracas, so they can bounce Ulamog to their own hand and cast it again, designing more permanents. So maybe this is enough to win the game. We will need some serious luck here to win the game after this. Oh, they will draw cards first. But that means they will exile their own, the One Ring. I see. This is a nice play. Okay, this Master of Death can come back and we draw Blazing Rootwalla. So now what? We need to block Ulamog and we need to hit next turn. So Surveil 2. Ulamog will exile our cards anyways. So maybe we can find Vengevines. So let's play Master of Death as a blocker. Ulamog doesn't trample. Okay, we found Basking Rootwalla and another Master of Death. Do we put those into our graveyard? Probably not. So let's keep both on top. And we'll pass the turn. We need some haste creatures next turn. But if my opponent exiles all of our Vengevines, we'll just lose the game. 1 Vengevine, 2 Vengevines, 3. We still have 1 Vengevine in our deck, if I'm seeing properly. So maybe we can hit a Careful Study. We have 1, 2, 3, and we still have a Careful Study. So our best draw is a Careful Study now. Maybe we hit exactly Careful Study to win this game. Okay, my opponent will try again. Maybe now they will exile our Underground Sea. Yeah. And now we don't have any outs, I guess. Oh, with Wasteland. Yeah, we don't have any outs here. Let's concede. Almost there. Almost there. We got a real chance against this deck after a mulligan to 4. Let's remember that. So we had a chance here. Let's see what was our next card. A Vengevine. Alright. So we would not win anyways. So let's try to be spicy here with our sideboard. Wasteland seems interesting. This card is interesting. Stifle is super interesting against Eldrazi's triggers. But what we will take from our deck. Force of Will is probably not that great against this deck, and Daze, because of the way triggers will happen when you cast Eldrazi's. Of course, this is Cloudpost, so you never have that many targets to counter. They will just play lands, and sometimes they will cast something with protection. So I am not a fan of Force of Will and Daze here. We don't need to protect our graveyard that much. So what we'll put in our deck? Surgical Extractions are not needed, I guess. We can include Wasteland. This will be my first time playing Madness decks with the Wasteland. This can be good and can take my opponent by surprise. Maybe we include some Stifles here, or Noxious Revival. Let's include Wasteland and Stifle and just see what will happen. This is an experiment, right? As I said in the intro, this is an experiment. So let's do the experience. Let's leave this. We are on the play. Let's keep a good hand, please. Okay, this is not that great, but we have something really good on turn 1. We have 2 frogs for next turn if we can draw a card. And we have Patrimony, Vengevine, Poxwalkers, Blazing Rootwalla on turn 1. So let's keep this. My opponent needs a Leyline of the Void to escape from this great starting hand. They don't have. Or maybe Surgical Extraction. So we start playing Verdant Catacombs. I'll crack it. Now what? I think I'll go with Badlands here. So we can have red mana to pump Blazing Rootwalla. And then I will cast Patrimony. Let's discard Vengevine. Let's discard Poxwalkers. Just no Fairy Macabres, please, please. And then we discard Blazing Rootwalla. Okay, my opponent will try Once Upon a Time in response. Glimmerpost. Glimmerpost is fine. And we will have both creatures coming back. Vengevine has haste. Yes, I would like to put Vengevine in the battlefield. And we attack my opponent for 4. Next turn we can attack for 10, 11. So this is not a turn 2 win, but it is almost there. My opponent plays Planar Nexus and pass turn. We draw. Okay, Underground Sea is great. We can cast Psychic Frog. Do I cast Psychic Frog or do I just pump Blazing Rootwalla here? Let's attack first. Because if I not pump, this is 7, 8, 9 damage. Our clock will not be better if I just pump here. 9 or 12 damage, it feels almost the same, and my opponent has ways to gain some life. So I think I will just cast Psychic Frog. Underground Sea. And let's cast the Frog. Rugged. And pass a turn. My opponent plays Urza's Tower and the One Ring, so they have protection. And they will not step the One Ring, not yet. So they just want the protection. We will cast our other Psychic Frog and pass a turn. And now my opponent will draw and draw again. To survive, they need to chain some the One Rings, which as a flavor aspect, this is super weird, right? A deck having more than the One Ring. So the correct name would be the 4 Rings. We won. My opponent couldn't find another One Ring. Now what? We could re-include Force of Will on the draw because of the One Ring. Daisies are not that good, as we saw on game 1. My opponent didn't saw Wasteland and Stifle, right? They didn't saw it. If you think about it, Stifle can counter the One Ring's trigger and we win the game anyways. My opponent can think that they casted the One Ring to be safe, and we just stifle its trigger, so my opponent will not have protection, and we just win the game. So Stifle can get our opponent by surprise. Force of Will means that we need 2 cards to counter something. So maybe Stifle is better than Force of Will if we have this approach. We still have Wastelands. I think I will just keep this. Let's submit deck back with 20 lands, which is wild. Okay, I like this hand. This is not great, but we have a Wasteland for turn 1, and then we can cast a Frog on turn 3. This is slow. This is not that fast as our last turn, but having Wasteland can be good, and we have other lands to cast everything. I think I'll keep this, mostly because I want to test Wasteland. I want to be a Wasteland mage. Oh, my opponent starts with Basic Forest, so no Wasteland for us. This means that my opponent probably has crop rotation, so this hand is actually good. Oh, double Vengevine. So let's just cast play Polluted Delta and pass. This probably means that my opponent is holding crop rotation for Bujukabog, so it would not be safe to have a Put Dream starting hand. My opponent plays Planet Nexus and pass the turn. Let's just pass 2. I do not want to fin the deck here. We don't need it. Okay, another land. Let's play and let's cast Psychic Frog, Underground Sea, and Badlands. And let's cast the Frog. Really. So, what you gonna do with your crop rotation, opponent? Nothing? Alright. Nothing is good. Next turn we will probably play Wasteland and cast Angel's Ravager. I'm not sure if I will try the Vengevine plan because it is clear that my opponent has a crop rotation. I can try to do the trick with the single Vengevine, but if we have to, yeah, my opponent is just holding crop rotation in their hand. So let's start doing the froggy thing for value. Oh, I forgot about discarding Master of Death. That's a bummer. I should discard it on my opponent's turn. I got too excited explaining what I'm gonna do. So let's draw a card first. So I'll just attack here. So we draw a card, my opponent will do nothing. Oh, they have something. A crop rotation, okay. Do they have Maze of Ith? I hope they don't. Oh, they have Maze of Ith. Alright. So no froggy time, but we have Wasteland. Let's play Wasteland and take Maze of Ith from my opponent's battlefield. And now we can pass a turn here. I don't need to cast Angel's Ravager immediately. My opponent plays Echoing Deeps, so they can copy Maze of Ith. But we can attack with Frog and Ravager next turn. So let's discard Ravager. And so far we are doing good. I'm not sure what else my opponent has in their hand, but so far that's good. It feels good. My opponent cannot use Maze of Ith targeting both creatures, not this turn at least. And this Froggy will be huge. Now that we did the thing, the Master of Death will come back. Yes, we would like to pay 1 life. We draw Rootwalla. If we cast Master of Death, we can attack with double Vengevine, unless my opponent has another crop rotation, which is definitely a possibility. But I think we will try it, because Angel's Ravager will discard all of our cards. So let's play Polluted Delta. Let's crack it for Underground Sea. And now we'll discard Vengevine. We'll discard Vengevine. Let's see if this will... Okay, my opponent has Fairy Macabre. That's fine. That's completely fine. We'll draw 4 cards this turn. We'll discard... okay, do I discard here or do I cast here now? I think I will discard Rootwalla. And considering that I will draw probably 4 cards this turn, I don't think I want to cast Master of Death right now. I think I will... Of course, I could cast it and Surveil 2 to draw good cards. But I will have 3 mana to do something. So I think discarding cards is better. So this is a good synergy that we have here. Let's discard our land. We are a Madness deck after all, so we will want to attack. We want to attack and want to discard cards for value. So let's attack here. Our Frog is really huge now. Angel's Ravager will draw 3 cards for us. Another Frog is good. My opponent is going to... Oh, I can discard more cards here, right? So let's discard you, and let's discard you. So our Froggy will be even better. We draw another card. Careful Study is good for next turn. And we will play our Froggy. And we can pass a turn. It can be scary because my opponent can have a Wrath effect like something that destroy each colored permanent. I'm not sure. But they don't have mana to do that yet. They have only 2 mana available. And my opponent concedes and we won the match. So maybe Madness is amazing in this metagame. We are 2-0. Let's go to our 3rd match. Round 3, we are on the play against chouqin. Alright. What about this hand? We have Daze for Sophiel, we have Master of Death for value, we can discard Vengevine. This is a slow hand, but let's keep it for science. Because Careful Study plus value cards plus defense, maybe it's good enough. It is not that fast, And we don't know what our opponent is playing, so let's try this. I'll play Underground Sea and cast Careful Study. Okay, it resolves another Daze and another land, not great cards. Let's discard Vengevine and Master of Death and pass the turn. I hope my opponent is playing a combo deck, because Daze and Force of Will can at least counter my opponent's plan until we find something. We need to find something. Underground Sea and pass the turn. Maybe it's just a tempo deck. We'll take Master of Death back, yes, and now we draw. Psychic Frog. Psychic Frog is amazing. Great draw. So let's do some froggy action. Badlands. And we can protect our frog with triple counterspell. So blue and black. My opponent will try to counter with Force of Will. We have our own force. And Froggy will enter the battlefield? Yes. And now let's remember to discard Master of Death until my opponent's end step. Okay, they will try to intone. Let's daze that. Taking Underground Sea back. So this is Rescaminator. I could keep double daze and exile Master of Death, but I want to have some value from this Froggy. Okay, surveillance from my opponent. Let's hope for no value, no immediate value. Okay, they Tomb Reanimate, and they pass the turn. So maybe this Froggy will hit. Let's discard our Zombie Wizard. And now Zombie Wizard will come back. This is such a nice synergy. And we draw Force of Will. Force of Will is good. So do I even discard Master of Death before damage? I'm not sure. I don't think so. I think I will hold it. We don't need to push that much damage immediately here. Let's draw a card first. I could discard a land, but my opponent also play Wastelands, so I think it is better to just hold a little bit more. Let's replay Underground Sea and pass turn. We have 4 cards in our hand. Our opponent also has 4 cards in their hand, but we have Froggy. And we have a Vengevine, so next turn we can even cast a Master of Death and a Basking Rituala to get Vengevine back. Okay, my opponent will just Swamp Cycle Troll, and that's it. If that's it, we are good. Okay, my opponent can have a removal spell here, but I think I will try it anyways. Let's discard Master of Death. Or maybe they have only something like Orcish Bowmasters. Oh, what? Okay, they will bounce my Frog. That's fine. That's fine. Now we can take Vengevine even easier. We don't need to cast our Master of Death. Master of Death comes back. Yeah. And we draw another Rituala. Even better. So let's cast Frog first. I'll play a land to play around days. So let's cast it first. And now I will discard our Rituala, the green one, because we don't have green mana. So let's cast it immediately. So Vengevine comes back. Yes. And I don't need to discard anything else immediately. So let's just attack with Vengevine. Now my opponent has many things to worry about. And maybe this time I will keep Master of Death in my hand. Let's see. Oh, they have their own Psychic Frog. I think this is, since they have 3 cards in their hand, maybe we don't need to worry about Psychic Frog here. And they can even reanimate Psychic Frog if they have a reanimation spell. Because we will have the best Psychic Frog. So I think we don't need to worry about this Psychic Frog. I think that's fine. Of course, this can block Vengevine, but it means that my opponent needs to discard everything. So let's discard Master of Death. And I'll have Master of Death back to my hand. And we draw another Vengevine. Okay, so this is interesting. I can discard Vengevine and cast Master of Death and Rituala. And then attacking for lethal, my opponent will need to block something. This Psychic Frog can be a 6/7. So my opponent can block just Vengevine. That's fine. We'll draw a card. I think we are ahead this game, so we can try this. So let's start discarding Vengevine. And now we will try to resolve Master of Death, surveilling before probably drawing with Psychic Frog. Poxwalkers can go to our bin. Careful Study can be kept on top. And now Poxwalkers will even come back with this Blazing Rituala. This is amazing, guys. This deck is gas. Let's discard Blazing Rituala. Just perfect deck building. We don't have a Taiga, but or a Bayou, but it is perfect deck building. Our Frog is giant. Our opponent doesn't have any answers. So let's attack. I will even attack with my Rituala, because if my opponent wants to just kill my Rituala, that's fine. Because I can just discard my last card here and deal 6, 10, 14 damage. So my opponent needs to block Vengevine or Frog. If they block Vengevine, they can discard 3 cards to still keep Frog as a creature next turn. But this is probably unbeatable for a tempo deck like my opponent's deck. Okay, they will decide to block Frog here. So this is a chump block. And my opponent is on 4 life. We still have a Force of Will, but it is not active. And let's pass a turn. What can my opponent do now? Ponder. And my opponent concedes, as they should. Alright, so how can we still win games 2 or game 3 if we lose game 2? But let's try to win. This is a blue-black frog scam deck. So we will try Noxious. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing correctly. Noxious Revival and Surgical Extraction. Stifle and Wasteland, maybe this is too much. So let's include 7 cards. Force of Will is not that good against a counterspell deck. Even Daze, I'm not sure if I want to keep Daze here. I can even include another card. I could keep Daze as a way to resolve my first frog, to help me resolving spells. So maybe Daze is good only because of that. But then I need to take something from my deck. Keeping only 1 Daze seems so weird, a single Daze. But maybe, especially on the draw, this is better than just keep too many answers. We have new answers here, and Noxious Revival can even take something that was countered to the top of our deck. Wasteland is a consideration. Maybe instead of these Daze, I would just include a single Wasteland as another land. But my opponent has lots and lots of lands. But a single Daze is not that important, or a single Staff, or a single Force of Will. Of course, I could take some other cards, but the deck is working so well. So I think I would just skip it with 17 lands. Alright, is this keepable? We have double Putrid Imp, and we only need a single land to have an amazing hand. It is debatable, because my opponent can have Wasteland here. But on the draw, maybe it's good enough. But my opponent gets 7, so they can have a quick, fast reanimation plan. So I will mulligan this. Okay, this seems better, because we have Surgical Extraction and 2 lands. I will keep it. It's not perfect, but I will keep it. And I think I will put Angel's Ravager back into the deck, so I can discard Vengevine and Master of Death and draw something good with Careful Step. I'm not sure if I will do this on turn 1, because maybe it's just good to keep Surgical Extraction around Daze. So I think I will just play Catacombs and pass, unless I draw something really good. Okay, another Vengevine. So let's play Catacombs and pass the turn. My opponent will cycle Troll, alright, for Underground Sea. They play Underground Sea and pass. Okay, pass is good. Maybe they have counterspells. Now we draw another land. So let's play Badlands, and I will crack Catacombs for an Underground Sea, and I will play Careful Study around Daze. Okay, my opponent will take this opportunity to cast Entomb, putting Atraxa, alright? And now they counter our Careful Study with Force of Negation. That's fine. Now it's my opponent's turn. They play Wasteland. They go for Underground Sea, which makes sense. And now they try to reanimate Atraxa. I will cast Surgical Extraction, paying life to play around Daze. This is the only Atraxa that my opponent has. Let's see their deck. They have double Fairy Macabre. In hand they have Animate Dead and Brainstorm. Reanimate, Psychic Frog. Any other fatties? No, this was their only fatty for this game. So now they can only reanimate Trolls and cast Psychic Frogs and Grief. This is the way my opponent win the game, with Troll, Psychic Frog, and Grief. And that's it. So let's exile Atraxa. Let's not do the same mistake that not exile our target from Surgical Extraction. And they have Animate Dead and Brainstorm. Now it's our turn. We can probably cast Master of Death for just the Surveillance ability in a couple of turns. My opponent will probably cast Animate Dead targeting Troll. So we need to get fast here, because Troll is a fast clock. Or maybe they are not going for it because they saw Surgical Extraction. Maybe they want to wait a little bit more. No, they are not waiting, so that's fine. They have a Troll. And no other land for my opponent. They have Brainstorm and something else. We draw another land. So let's play 1 land. Let's crack a fetch for Underground Sea. Let's crack another for another Underground Sea. And we play Master of Death, hoping that this resolves and we can surveil good cards. Okay, Baskin Rootwalla. Both cards are good, right? We definitely want Careful Study on top, because I can cast Rootwalla and another possible creature next turn. So I don't want to surveil this to my graveyard. So let's keep Rootwalla on top and Careful Study on top. And we pass a turn. Unfortunately, you cannot block Troll here. We need 3 creatures to block Troll. My opponent will definitely attack here. We have just a single more turn to find blockers for this card. Brainstorm and a Surveil land. So they will probably get rid of one of their cards, Grief. Okay, they don't want Grief. Unfortunately, we, as a Grixis deck, cannot cast Vengevine from our hand. So let's cast Careful Study here. Oh, my opponent will counter it. Okay, nice. So now that Rootwalla that is on top is not good enough, so we'll definitely get rid of it. Let's crack my Marsh Flats for a Badlands. Let's attack. We need to draw something next turn, or we will lose the game. My opponent attacks and plays Psychic Frog. Now we draw. Poxwalkers is not good enough, and we lost. That's fine. This was actually closer than expected. We had an answer to my opponent's Atraxa, but my opponent had a great keep with counterspells and multiple reanimation spells. So let's do better on game 3. I still think counter spells are not good against an opponent with Force of Negation, Force of Will, and Daze. So maybe it's just better to be more resilient. I'll just submit back the deck with this extra Wasteland. Wasteland with Noxus Revival is an interesting play. If your opponent don't have many lands, you can Wasteland them and then take Wasteland again to get rid of 2 lands in a sequence. Okay, this is not that fast. Is this good enough to win this game? My opponent can have a fast reanimation sequence again, and we have 4 lands. This is almost a keep. Let's try something better. Let's mulligan. Okay, my opponent kept 7, so this is so scary to keep. Noxus Revival is an answer, but then what? What do you think we will do next? I think this hand will not win the game. Let's try to go 5. Okay, this hand is not best, but we only need a way to put Vengevine and Master of Death to our graveyard, and we have Wasteland. I think I'll keep this. I'll keep this, and let's get rid of Ravager and 1 Underground Sea. But this is really close. This is not a good hand, but oh, my opponent is... Oh, it is my turn. Ah, it was my turn. I'm a loser. Why I did that? I forgot that I lost last game. That's fine, that's fine. I kept a hand thinking that I was on the draw. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't have a good night's sleep, and maybe this is finally getting on my brain. Let's breathe, and do better. Okay, so my opponent didn't want their land. Let's force them to think better about this and pass the turn. Now they play their own Wasteland. We need lands. Vengevine is not a land. Do I even play Underground Sea here? I don't think I do, because if I play the Underground Sea, my opponent will probably cycle Troll and then get rid of my land, and we will not do anything for the rest of the game. But maybe we don't have expectations to do anything better than that. So I think I will play Underground Sea here and pass the turn. Maybe my opponent doesn't have a Troll to cycle. Maybe. No, they do have. Alright. Or maybe they just want to reanimate their own Troll, and we'll keep this Underground Sea for an extra turn. They play Underground Sea. Yeah, they will destroy my land. Okay, they go Pounder. They shuffle their library. So my mistake on turn 1 didn't do bad, because of course we could maybe have... No, I'm not talking seriously here. Of course it would be better to just play a land. But my opponent had Wasteland, so we would still get stuck with a single land this turn. Now we need another land to play Psychic Frog next turn. And maybe get double Vengevine in a single turn. But my opponent cannot have a single counterspell. And let's remember they kept 7 cards. They did shuffle after their Ponder last turn, so maybe you had a chance. Okay, they will try to reanimate their Troll. You can reanimate. I don't have a single answer. And they play Wasteland, another one, so we will not crack these Catacombs yet. Let's draw a land. Another land, yes. So this is not a win. My opponent probably has Force of Will here. But if they have Force of Negation, this is completely fine. So I'll take Badlands here. And now I'll take other land. Let's see if they want to take one of my lands immediately. So you and you. Maybe I should take... Yeah, they have Daze. Maybe I should take double Underground Sea on this spot. But in case... Yeah, maybe double Underground Sea would be better. I'm relearning to play Madness with this new configuration. Oh, my opponent will not use Wasteland. Yeah, since we just replayed lands one turn after another, maybe my opponent doesn't think this Wasteland is that useful as a Stone Rain. Oh no, they will take my Underground Sea. So come on, put your Dimp from the top. Oh, they will cast Grief. Okay, you can take one of my cards from my hand, I don't care. Any one of them, actually. The right choice here would be taking Root Wallet. I know it is a free card for me, but all the other cards will just give me better value at some point. They can take Master of Death, but I will just pay 1 life to take it back. Vengevines, I want them into my graveyard, so my opponent did the right choice, and I have a free creature, but the thing is to avoid getting double Vengevine in the future. So now we draw. Ha! Okay, Imp. Let's attack first. My opponent did exactly what they needed to do to not get double Vengevine in my favor this turn. If it wasn't their Grief, if this Putter Imp resolves, this could be a win. Oh, my opponent will try to brainstorm to find a Daze or a Force of Will. I'm just playing Putter Imp because I think that my opponent has counter spells. My opponent sees the danger and counters my creature. Because of course it is better to just hold Putter Imp to have 2 creatures to have double Vengevine in a single turn. But my opponent is so ahead that they now have a lethal Troll attacking next turn. Oh, they will reanimate their Psychic Frog. So yeah, What can I draw here? Probably nothing. Yeah, so let's concede. We had some trouble with our mulligans this match. I couldn't find a good hand against this opponent. Maybe something with my small choices, like what I will keep as my starting hand or which lands I will fetch for. But sometimes you just lose. Of course, I could probably play better with more experience with the deck, I think. But as I said to you, this is my first time playing this deck, so far I think we're doing a good job. Let's go to our next match. This time we are on the draw. So this hand is a mulligan, we don't have any enablers. Okay, this is also a hand without enablers. We have double force, but I don't think this is a keep. Okay, this is better, let's keep this. I'm not sure if I keep Force of Will. This is a hand, this is a mulligan to 5, so let's... well, this can be a combo matchup, of course. But I don't think we can keep Force. Let's keep Shoe Lands, Careful Study, and double Rootwalla. My opponent kept 7. Underground C, and pass. We draw Vengevine. So, if I cast Careful Study now, I can discard Vengevine and another card. But next turn we cannot cast double Rootwalla because we don't have Volcanic Islands in our deck. So I think I would just pass the turn here. And next turn I cast Careful Study, discard Vengevine and a Rootwalla, and then cast another Rootwalla. Other thing that I can do is just cast Careful Study, trying to hit something here, but I think I will wait one more turn. And we can even play around days, waiting a single turn here. In moments like this, I think that maybe this deck can have Surveil lands. Maybe 2 Surveil lands, but it is really hard when you need an untapped land to play what you... Yeah, this is another Rescaminator deck. My opponent plays Underground C and animates that. That's fine. Let's go to our draw step. We draw days. Little too late. Okay, so let's play Underground C. Let's crack Verdant Catacombs, take in Badlands, and now we'll cast Careful Study. Okay, Psychic Frog is great for next turn, as long as my opponent doesn't have Wasteland. So let's put Vengevine and Rootwalla there. I'd like to cast Rootwalla, yes. And I would like to cast my other Rootwalla. And now we even have Trick Creatures to block Draw. Of course, I don't want to block Draw with my Trick Creatures, but we can definitely do it. Only if my opponent steps out, I think, because they can have bounce spells or removal spells. Now it's my opponent's turn. And we have a Daze, an active Daze in our hand. Okay, my opponent attacks here. What they can do at instant speed that costs 2 mana. They can have a bounce spell or Orcish Bowmasters. You know what? I think I will block here. I think I'll block here. Because Rootwallas are not that good in this matchup. And oh, my opponent doesn't have anything. Okay, it's a 3 for 2, but I think it is on my favor because Vengevine can come back in the future. My opponent has Wasteland. They will cast Psychic Frog. Do I cast Daze here just to save one of my lands? And then I can cast my own Psychic Frog? I think I will cast Daze here just to force my opponent's Wasteland. Yeah, it worked. Because I don't want to lose my Underground Sea so soon. I want to cast my own Psychic Frog. Oh, we have another one. That's fine. So let's play the Frog. It's in the play. And now we will pass the turn. My opponent's Frog is better than mine now because they have more cards in their hand. But yeah, will not block. That's fine. You can take your free card. We have a Ravager. Hopefully my opponent will not have that many counter spells. And we can discard Ravager for value next turn. They have Swamp. Oh, they play everything. Oh, we don't have our Ravager anymore. So let's discard it for value right now. Unfortunate. That's unfortunate. I cannot cast Angel's Ravager. Angie. And Griff will see my sad Underground Sea in my hand. And we draw Imp. Imp would be amazing here because we have Vengevine. So this would be great. Imp. Angel's Ravager, take Vengevine back, attack. But unfortunately, we couldn't find what we need. So let's give Flying to my Frog. I don't want to be blocked. My opponent could block just to avoid me drawing a card. So let's exile Ravager here. I don't have ways to take it back, and so my opponent cannot reanimate it. And we will fly over Griff. So we attack, dealing 2 damage. I think I want to keep both cards in my hand. I don't want to discard them now. Frog draws a card. Force of Will is not good card to keep right now. And I will not even cast Imp. I will just play Underground Sea and pass. So 2 Frogs online. Okay, my opponent will deal with my Badlands. I will tap a black mana here. And they will enter the combat phase. Attacking me, dealing 4 damage or maybe more if they decide to discard cards. Frog, no. Okay. Just drawing extra cards, seems good. Brainstorms. And Polluted Delta. And pass the turn. Alright. Passing the turn is good. We draw. Poxwalkers. Not the best here. So let's attack with our frog first. We attack. Let's see if my opponent will do something. Okay, they will bounce my frog. That's fine. Now what? My opponent probably will counter my frog and I will lose the game on the spot here. But I don't think I have a chance if this frog doesn't resolve right now. So we need to try again. Yeah, they have days and we have a Force of Will without a pitch. This is probably too much. I wait one more turn. Let's pass a turn here. Only because we have Vengevine there, and if we draw a single Root Walla and my opponent can counter my Potrimp, they have only days, for example, this can still be a game of Magic for us. But my opponent starts their own turn with Brainstorms. Brainstorm and Brainstorm 2 turns in a row. Plays Polluted Delta, cracks it. At least it is no Wasteland. They have Murktide? I don't think they do. And besides Animate Dead, we are not seeing that many reanimation spells. My opponent draws an extra card with their frog and plays another one. Yeah. Now we draw a frog. My opponent has 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They can deal 10 damage, but we have a frog. If this frog resolves and my opponent doesn't have removal or counter spells, we can still live for another turn. But that's it. Our frog will block one of their frogs. Okay, they will discard Atraxa, and I will discard Poxwalkers. They discard Entomb. I discard Force of Will. They discard Grief. I discard Potrimp. I'm just forcing my opponent to discard their whole hand. My Psychic Frog will lose the battle because my opponent has more cards. Oh, they had double Grief, Entomb, and Atraxa. I'm not even sure if this was better for my opponent than just casting those spells. Of course, we will not live more than that, but yeah, it seems that whoever has the first large frog will win the game. So we cannot draw anything here that put us ahead. My opponent has 1 mana Ace creature and 2 flying creatures, so let's concede. So now let's sideboard. Noxus, Revival, and 3 Surgical Extractions. Let's take Force of Will. Maybe this time we try to keep Dazes in our deck. Let's try something slightly different from last match against Rescaminator. So I could take 1 Root Walla, 1 Master of Death, and 1 Poxwalkers. Let's try like that. We are testing the deck, so maybe it is good to have 7 answers to Graveyard, and also 4 free counter spells, especially on the play. So we are on the play this time. Okay, this seems fine. This is not fast, but this is reliable enough to keep. And if my opponent has a Wasteland plan, this Revival can take 1 land back to our hand. So let's start playing Potrimp. Let's see if my opponent will counter. Oh, let's see if my opponent wants to counter that, because this is really scary. We could have double Vengevine and yeah, but my opponent has no counter spells, at least not now. And they play Polluted Delta and pass a turn. Okay, draw Underground Sea. That's fine. So let's attack first. Okay, my Imp connects. And let's try to cast our first frog. My opponent has a counter spell. That's fine. I can take this frog again. It would be amazing if my opponent tries to reanimate my frog and then I just put my frog top of my library. I don't think my opponent has days. Oh, and then they put Force of Will in their graveyard, so maybe they don't have any counter spells right now. Let's hope for that. They draw, Thousand Tarn, Brexit, Underground Sea, Doughty Voidwalker. So let's put our Psychic Frog on top of our library in response. Okay, we did it. Let's raise this Doughty Voidwalker with a frog, unless my opponent can counter it again. But now we can even play around days. So we draw, frog, and we play Polluted Delta. Oh, no Careful Study, just Froggy. And let's attack dealing 1 damage. This Potrimp will be a 1/1 for the rest of the game because of Doughty Voidwalker. I don't want to discard Poxwalkers to put counter on Frog, only if it feels needed. It is probably better to just cast Poxwalkers here. So my opponent will try to Windtomb and maybe reanimate something. Atraxa. Oh, they can reanimate Atraxa, so that's bad. That's really bad for us. Now maybe this is game over. Yeah, my opponent had Doughty and Atraxa. We could be more patient there, holding our Noxus Revival. But Frog seems so good, and it seems so good since our last game. They now have Psychic Frog, Reanimate, Daze, and even Unlicensed Hers. This is over sideboarding against Madness. And we don't have real removal spells here, but so our only hopes here is to build a huge Psychic Frog. And we probably cannot do that, because my opponent also has their own Frog and multiple extra cards, more cards than we do. Of course, and Atraxa has Death Touch. So yeah, this is a game over, unfortunately. Let's concede here and save some time. We are learning about how to build the best plans after sideboarding against those decks. This battle wasn't that easy for my opponent, but they kept 7 cards. Yeah, they kept a great 7 card starting hand. And yeah, we lost, unfortunately. Let's go to our last match today. We are on the draw with a bad hand, so let's mulligan. Okay, this is slow, but it can be good. Let's skip. And let's put Force of Will back and see what my opponent's playing. Polluted Delta. Oh, another Rescaminator deck. I hope it isn't. Daze is good to protect our Potter right now. Daze is good. So let's take Underground Sea here and cast our Imp. Okay, it is in play. Next turn I can discard Poxwalkers and cast Rootwalla. My opponent will cycle Troll. And now it's their turn. They have Underground Sea. Oh, they want to Fatal Push or Imp. And they will succeed, but before that resolves, we will discard Poxwalkers. And now we will cast Rootwalla. My opponent is trying to understand what's happening. So Rootwalla is being cast, and Poxwalkers will enter the battlefield. It's a 3/1 Death Touch, and this is a 1/1 with a pump ability. And my Imp dies. So this Ravager will wait at least one more turn. Oh, you'll try to reanimate after that. Nope. Okay, we succeed. So next turn, if I draw a blank, I will just play, okay, another Daze. In this case, do I just replay Underground Sea here, or can I be more aggressive? Because my opponent can try the same game plan with Animate Dead or something. If I push some damage here, I will deal 6 damage to my opponent, and then I cannot do anything next turn. I think it can be important to hold Daze yet, so let's just attack for 4 instead of 6. Let's see what my opponent is cooking after that reanimate. Ponder? Ponder is fine. I don't want to really cast Daze here. Only if my opponent has something like a reanimating Atraxa. Okay, they didn't shuffle. They play an Underground Sea to play around Daze. Oh, they have Nethergoyf. That's fine. That's actually okay. We have a Death Touch creature. Let's see if they want to block. So let's play Ormire. And I will attack with Poxwalkers. They want to trade. That's fine. Nethergoyf can come back from the graveyard. Exiling creatures. Exiling cards, I'm sorry. And they cycle another Troll. Okay. We need another land to start casting Ravagers. They play basic Swamp. 3 mana. Okay, they will cast Nethergoyf again. They are playing against around Daze, so that's okay. It's a 2/3 right now. We draw. Vengevine. Not what we want here. Do I attack? Can my opponent put an instant at instant speed in the graveyard? They probably can. And I don't want to lose my Rootwalla in the spot. So I think I'll just pass here. And I don't want to activate. I want to have Daze paying 2 mana instead of bouncing land. Another Nethergoyf. That's fine. Oh, they will attack. Do I try to trade here? Okay, let's try to trade my Rootwalla for this Goyf. Oh, they have Stifle? They have Stifle. Okay. Now this game is practically lost, but Stifle was a good catch there. Yeah, we will lose 2 Nethergoyfs on this spot, so we can concede. Yeah, let's concede and try to do better next turn. Next game. Yeah, Stifle. I cannot say anything. I have Stifles in my own sideboard. So let's sideboard. I think I will do more or less the same thing against my opponent. It is not the same list that we played against last match. It is similar, but it is not the same. Again, Force of Will is not good in this matchup. Maybe I try not even Daze. Maybe I try my opponent saw Daze. Maybe they will play around Daze now. Can I try Wasteland instead of Surgicals? Let's include Surgical and a single Wasteland like we did today. I still want to try this configuration here. 1 extra land since my opponent may have Wastelands, and some answers to graveyard shenanigans. Okay, so this time we are on the play. Do I keep this? Triple Frog. Is this enough to win the game? Unfortunately, I don't think it is. Triple Frog can... It seems good, but no, this is just too slow. We don't have anything better to do. Okay, double Surgical. I'll keep this. I'll keep this. I will keep Badlands and land, and double Surgical and Rootwalla. Let's start with Badlands and Imp, and pass the turn. My opponent plays Misty, Brexit, for an Underground Sea, and Nethergoyf. Okay, so at the end of their turn, I will cast Blazing Rootwalla. It's our turn. We draw Vengevine. Okay, let's discard Vengevine just to deal 1 extra damage to my opponent, and let's attack. I don't think my opponent will block Rootwalla, but I can be wrong. Yeah, and I will bump Rootwalla a little bit for damage. Let's play Marsh Flats and pass the turn. My opponent plays Underground Sea. And Orcish Bowmasters. Okay. Someone is still playing Orcish Bowmasters instead of Frog. And Orcish Bowmasters, as I said before, it is really good against our deck. So yeah, they're going after Imp, which makes sense. And now I cannot attack with Rootwalla anymore. Let's draw Master of Death. Almost a good card at this position. So let's just pass here. Yeah, and I did the wrong reading of my opponent, so maybe I didn't need Surgicals in this matchup. They play Polluted Delta and another Nethergoyf, and they will reanimate my Vengevine. We cannot allow that, right? So let's exile our Vengevine with Surgical Extraction. Okay, of course we will not exile other Vengevines, only that one. And now their Nethergoyf is huge. I will not block. Withdraw. Another Imp. Guys, we cannot stand a chance against this deck anymore, I think. I will wait one more turn. I will crack Marsh Flats around Stifle now, where my opponent can just stifle my fetch land. But this seems not good. Not good at all. So let's take Underground Sea. And I don't think I will play Imp immediately here. I think I will wait one more turn. In case we find something like Careful Study, Vengevine, Rootwalla. Opponent plays Underground Sea and attacks. No blocks yet. And they place a third Nethergoyf. Alright. 1 mana 3/4. And we draw another land. So we can Surveil here and block. We'll go to 6. We can block here, and take 5. But we will just lose on the backswing. I will play Master of Death here. Oh, my opponent has Stifle. GG's. We cannot win. Okay, that's unfortunate. We had some great games at the beginning of this league. But then at the end, we just meet 3 blue-black decks in a row, and it wasn't a great experience for Madness. So let's do a quick recap about our deck after this league. It was super fun to try this strategy in Legacy, because Master of Death is a card that sees lots of play in Vintage decks with Vengevine, and trying to adapt that strategy to Legacy, it is an interesting process. Psychic Frog is a very pushed card, and sometimes our Frog wasn't that good against our enemy Frogs, because Careful Study is a card that it is good to as a card selection in our deck, but it is also card disadvantage. So if you want to Frog on turn 2, you always have less cards in your hands than your opponent if they also cast a Natural Frog on turn 2. So your Frog will be worse than your opponent's Frog. But if your opponent is not playing Psychic Frog, and you can stick your Frog first, you can stick your Frog, your Frog will be good. So I like Psychic Frog in Madness. I like the Master of Death. I don't think Days and Force of Will are that needed in this deck. I know that I told you at the intro that I wanted to try something similar to what they do in Vintage with a Madness approach or a Hollowvine approach, but with counterspells. Yeah, we have Countervine decks in Vintage, but I'm not sure if this works in Legacy, and for some reason. In Legacy, we need to have really redundant with our choices. We don't want to have fewer enablers than our opponents. If our opponent destroys our Imp and then counters our Frog, we don't have good enablers. So maybe we need more enablers than just Imp and Frog. They are great, but if you cannot find them, or stick with one of them, keep one of them in your battlefield, you can just lose the game, because you will not have good ways to keep doing things. So maybe we just don't want those 8 cards and just want Faithless Looting and being a 4-color deck instead of a 3-mana deck. And besides that, I love the moments that we had everything. When you have Imp or Frog, and then Poxwalkers, Vengevine, and Rootwallas and Master of Death, and even Ravager. We didn't have that many opportunities to cast Ravager this league, but when we did, it was amazing. And as I said at the intro, Orcish Bowmasters is seeing less and less play because of Psychic Frog. So we did meet our Orcish Bowmasters deck at the end, but this is probably fine, because, you know, sometimes your opponent will have Orcish Bowmasters and you can just know that it would be hard to win. You can even take your Ravagers to take another cards from your sideboard, for example. What about our sideboard? It was pretty fun to include cards that I never include in my sideboard. This is a completely new sideboard approach for Madness or Dredge or any deck that I'm used to play. Noxus Revival was interesting. This is a card that sees lots of plays in Vintage. And playing this in Legacy, at least in this league, we had some opportunities to cast this card for value. But again, this is similar to card disadvantage, because if you want to keep many cards in your hand to discard to Frog, for example, Noxus Revival is just one less card in your hand and one card on top of your library. But it was interesting. We had some opportunities to cast this card for value in this league, especially against graveyard decks. But we didn't win against the graveyard decks. So at the end of the league, of course, we start winning. But then I'm not sure if this is just better than just stick with Line of the Void or other cards. So if you don't want Daze and Force of Will and just want to have more enablers instead, maybe you can just reconfigure the sideboard choices. As I said before, this was just an attempt to build something similar to a vintage deck with this new flavor of Psychic Frog in Legacy. And I think it was succeed for a first league. Being a 2-3, a 2-3 result in a first league with a deck is always interesting, because you can see what you can improve in your deck choices, in your deck building choices. Wasteland, we didn't meet Lands deck. Wasteland against that Eldrazi Cloudpost deck was good. It pushed a little bit our deck against that strategy to destroy my opponent's lands, but that's all. And you never had an opportunity to cast Stifle. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope you had a great time here with me. Click like button, subscribe, and leave a comment about Madness decks in general. What do you think about it? What do you think about Madness compared to Dredge or compared to other great strategies in Legacy? I think the deck is super fun to play, and maybe we didn't have good luck, great luck at some of our games. We had some harsh mulligans, but maybe because our deck can be improved taking the counter spells and just being more consistent. So yeah, that's it. See you soon. Bye.